Hi everyone, in this video we're going to look at a type of pictorial view called an exploded view. Now what we're going to look at is some of the basic rules of how we lay out an exploded view, but then also look at how we create them using Autodesk Inventor. So an exploded view is a type of assembly drawing. Essentially what it does is it shows how all the parts would fit together, but it shows them in a disassembled view. So these can either be orthographic or pictorial, so usually isometric, and this is shown in the image down here. So you can see an exploded elevation where you can see all the different parts and how they might fit together. They're all aligned in terms of where they would be placed together. But a better view that's given is the exploded isometric, because you can see a little bit clearly how the parts actually might slot together and lock together in terms of how they fit. So they tend to be used in manufacturing to show how parts of a product would assemble. The idea is to show how would this actually be assembled, how would they go together. So even though it's shown in a disassembled state, it actually gives you a good idea of how you put them together. They're really commonly used in instruction manuals for things like flat pack furniture and even in things like Lego. If you were to open up one of these instruction manuals, you would see a series of exploded views giving you an idea of how things should go together. So like a sectional view, an exploded view is a type of technical detail. Now there's a couple of clear rules that we need to follow when we're creating exploded views. First of all, parts need to be exploded along the same axis that would connect them. What that means is they should be aligned when they're exploded to where they would originally be positioned. So for example, this little axle here is aligned with the two holes that it would actually fit through. So it's been exploded to the left because that shows the direction where it would go to and from. Basically, how would it move if we were to assemble it or disassemble it? It would slot through those holes. There's a slight difference with the little wheel here, because although it would be aligned with those two holes, it would move up into that position. So if you were actually putting that together, you would slot it in most likely from the bottom, although you could do it from the front. The other rule is that there must be a clear space between each part. So for example, each one of these parts has clear daylight between them. None of the parts overlap, so again that it can be nice and clear and there's no confusion. Remember, everything is about clarity. The best example again is this exploded isometric. You can see there's a clear space between each one of the parts, and it's quite clear how this would be assembled. The wheel would move in first, the axle would go through the centre, and then this little lock and nut would go over the top to keep it all together. Let's now look at an example. You can see an exploded isometric view of the bird feeder. You can see again we've followed all of the rules. Each of the parts have been exploded in line with their original position, making sure that you can see how it would fit together. So the roof, the case and the base have all been exploded in line, and the hanging rod has been exploded forwards because it would line up with those two holes. It would basically push through those two holes to lock the roof and the case into position. In order to create an exploded view, first of all you need to have a fully assembled file. This can be seen here. It's been fully assembled and it's been fully constrained, and we can see that from looking in our little browser bar over at the left hand side. Everything's been put together and all the constraints are in place. Our starting point is to go to File and to select a new type of file. This time we'll have to scroll down and we'll have to find the standard millimeter IPN. This stands for Presentation, Inventor Presentation. We're going to start by clicking Create, and it will open up a blank workspace, but it will ask us first of all to insert a model. If this window doesn't appear automatically, you just go up to Insert Model or Insert, and you choose the assembly file that you used. Now depending on what version of Inventor you're using, you might see some extra little windows. For example, we don't need this one over at the side. We can also ignore the little timeline bar down at the bottom. What we want to do is we want to first of all explode these parts, and we need to make sure we do that in the correct direction. We do that using the Tweak Components option. I'm going to roll my zoom out just a little bit. I'm going to choose Tweak Components, and then I'm going to select first of all the base component by clicking it once. I'm then asked which direction I want to explode it in. I can do that by hovering over one of the little arrows, clicking and holding and dragging down, and I drag it down until there's clear space between it. I can also use the specific numbers to make sure it's exploded to an exact point. So for example, if I only wanted to explode it by 50mm, it would position it here. I want to have a negative number so it moves down the way, and you can see that if I only went to negative 50mm, it wouldn't give us clear daylight, which is one of our rules. So I'll move it to 100. Once I've got that, I can either use a little tick or just hit enter on my keyboard. The little blue line indicates the trail that it follows. It traces it back to its original location. I'll then go to tweak components again. I'll select my roof component, click the top arrow and hold, and drag up, again making sure there's clear daylight. This time it can be a positive number because it's been exploded up the way, and I'll just round that off to 80 and hit enter to show that I'm done. The last part that needs to be exploded is the hanging rod. Again, I go to tweak components, I select the hanging rod, and then this time I have to choose a direction forward or back. In this case it wouldn't really matter, but it seems to make sense to move it forwards. I click and hold and drag towards it again, just making sure there's enough space between them, and I could round that number off to 140. At that point I have a fully exploded view. I can then save that file and I'm able to use it in some drawings. If I go back into my drawing sheet, you can see in terms of this one, it's been placed in an isometric view. To add this to a drawing sheet, we do exactly what we would have done to place any other type of drawing view. I would go to base. I would then choose the file that I want. I can do that by selecting the little navigate option here. Select my IPN file, which is my inventor presentation, my exploded view. Choose that, and then what I'll be able to do is insert that in the normal way. That can then be arranged and orientated in whichever way I want, but again, most exploded views are shown as isometric. We tend not to use hidden detail here because the whole idea is that it's been used to show how the object fits together rather than any extra additional technical details. It would still require a label, but it can be drawn at a larger or smaller scale to fit onto your page. Remember, the important things are that all of the parts are exploded aligned and in the right direction that they might be assembled, and also that you leave a clear space between each one of the parts so that there is no overlapping.